Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my paper is the early modern landscape of the Europe and the medieval wild horses. Because I have written many papers about medievalism in many areas, so I thought, why not? I can write something about the preservation of environment in the medieval times. So it should not be like we think something like a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's for the very ancient times. And I think it was better than our type of our time of the area. Something. So that's why I have written this one, the early modern landscape of the Europe and the medieval wild horses, and these are connected each other for the preservation of the environment. So my name is Ananda Majumdar, and I'm an early educator in from the kindergarten to grade 3 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, in Edmonton Public School. And in this way that I am also a professional educator student at Harvard Graduate School of Education Online, which is a professional education as a child development, CEEL. I'm doing my postdoctorate in divinity from North Central Theological Seminary in the United States. And recently, I got a professorship of practice in social science of the Kennedy University of St. Lucia, Caribbean Islands, and QAHE accredited organizations somewhere in England. Historical mentions of the herds of the wild horses in Europe are frequently taken unquestionably as a reference for natural grazing in nature conversation. It has been assumed that the such herds roamed the wilderness freely and functioned socially and ecologically, unrestrainedly and uninfluenced by humans. The social functioning of these herds has been influenced for centuries by restricting the allowance of the stallions, early withdrawal of the foals, and protection against the predators. However, this paper proposes a novel approach to nature and cultural heritage protection by reinstating the medieval agricultural technique of the keeping the free factually. The paper has analyzed the breeding of the wild horses and the rewilding of the European continent at the present day by examining the wild horses of the medieval age. So it has a many situation, it's many issues, but because of the time concerns and it's not also possible to say everything, but I have already sent my full paper to the organization, so I hope then it will be understandable that what I have written about the as a system of the agricultural technique of the keeping the free factually and the preservation of the environment and the lands, and also the sustain the landscape of the European continent by preserving the wild horses and their herds as well. So these are all connected for the sustainability, environment, and wild animal preservation. Therefore, my keywords are the medieval horses, medievalism, archaeological phenomenon, natural preservation, historical content, natural grazing, breeding and harvesting, cattle project in European natural landscape, European rewilding projects, archers and wild horses, conic horses, herds of the wild horses. So also the variant of the horses as well. And I think I have another paper as well about the bull of the northern European continent, the harvest of the bull of the northern European continent, something like I wrote a long time ago. So this is my second paper about horses, the wild animal harvesting in European, especially in the medieval times. And that's why, it's the combination of the picture as well, something the horses and the medieval horses as well, and the medieval activities by horses too. Especially when you know that all the tale stories of the medievalism, like King Arthur to the knights and everything else, medieval combat of the horses. So horses were also important for the war of the medieval times and the combat of the stuff and everything else. So these are all linked and connected each other for the preservation of the horses and the importance of the horses in the medieval times as well as in the contemporary era as well. So the aim of my paper is to propose as a novel approach to the nature and the cultural heritage. It's a combination, or we can say the amalgamation of the nature and the culture heritage protection by the reinstating the medieval agriculture technique of the keeping the free factually. If you also see something about the Flemish culture or the Flanders of the Belgium and in the Netherlands, we can also see that it was a paint of and phenomenal paint and architecture, and about the five senses, something like the understanding of the touches, understanding of the smell, understanding of the hearing, or something during the Flemish culture. Something they also have mentioned about uh, the cultural heritage of the horse breeding and in those areas too. So it has a many different type of histories and cultural um, density in European continent, in various part of the European continent, from the Netherlands, Belgium, England, and some other countries, Northern Europe as well. The grazers are being deployed in rewilding projects and European activities to introduce natural grazing as an ecological process. So the Vera has been an essential advocate for the campaign for natural grazing. It is a natural grazing to support a pristine ecosystem instead of a seasonal grazing. The original natural landscape in Europe is half open and park-like instead of a closed canopy forest. Free-living um, herbivores are believed to be the key drivers for the hypothesized open natural landscape of the post-glacial Europe, on which the Vera bases his wood pasture hypothesis with the cyclical vegetarian turnover processes. In rewilding projects, the primitive cattle breeds like the Galloway and Highland cattle have replaced iconic orchards that they became extinct globally in 1627. So the wild horses and the orchards have been important original grazers in the Holocene landscape of Europe from the Middle Ages to the modern ages. It has been considered that the herds of the wild horses roamed large part of the Europe and were an integral part of the landscape process. Nowadays, the conic horses and a wide range of the horses breeds have replaced these original wild horses. The wild horses from the Middle Ages have been taken as an example of how natural grazing has been a way of the naturally functioning ecosystem. So again, I say it's a combination of the preservation of the environment and the wild through the wild animal and their preservation too. And luckily that we are following in the modern days as well, um, from the medieval times. So many gadgets and articles have described that the Przewalski's horses should not be considered wild but feral descendants of the domesticated horses herded in Botai in Central Asia. Therefore, it is a widespread concept that the wild horses exist worldwide, such as the Eurasian wild horses like the Feras. Konik have been considered as the best crossbreed horses of the Polish firm and the Turpan, but not considered as the purebred wild horses. So Exmoor ponies are the direct living representatives of the Turpan breeds in rewilding projects in northwestern Europe. Exmoor ponies have been considered among the most suitable breeds for natural grazing. Throughout the historical analysis and research, it has been said that the humans have influenced Exmoor ponies since the 1900 centuries. They then determined which stallions were or were not allowed to catch the mares. Before the 1900 centuries or earlier times, it was considered that the human influence over horses was minimal. According to the zoo archaeology, the wild horses are still present in England between 9000 BC and 2000 BC. However, there is no proof by archaeology that the wild horses were still roaming in England after the early Mesolithic lithic period. The European wild horses have been vanished throughout the continent after the Mesolithic age. During the Holocene, the expansion of the distribution of the wild horses expanded in Europe, while in England it has yet to be recolonized after an estimated 8000 BC, since the Doggerland no longer formed a connecting bridge with the continental, therefore the historical continental Europe and England. Therefore, historical arguments continue to differ between the wild and domestic horses and the existence of the wild horses in England's DNA in continental Europe. So this is the fact that there is no really uh, an exact evidence or something that what is actually the wild horses and the domestic horses and everything else, because we have seen that in the ancient times sometimes it was not written things, it was only the verbal areas, or maybe if it is written things, it was not really everything was found because of many calamities or something like that, and therefore nobody knows that whether it is a wild or it is a domestic. So there is a lot of argument between the historians and the renowned authors about. But the thing is that because of the social science, it is not really an abstract, it's a continual process of education and studies. So therefore we have to also consider something about the improved definition of those wild horses and domestic horses as well, and also distinct the horses breeds for further and the continuation of the studies of the animal world, especially in the horse, or especially in the equine study. So this is a critical review of this paper, something like a critical evaluations under literature review, that argumentations about what is the wild and what is domestic horse or something. Now, the paper has been assumed through the subordinate sources of data. The subordinate sources of data include the academic articles and website. The description of the sources takes the methods of the writing, the essay, reading, gathering in-depth insights on topics, exploring the ideas, summarizing, interpreting, and mainly the expressing them in a word, which is a documentary analysis to the qualitative approach. The paper explains the natural grazing process in the modern era of the continental Europe throughout the following medieval European wild horse processes to restore the natural landscaping. Therefore, the paper has mentioned the historiography of wild horses, considered the natural landscaping protected since the medieval era. I would like to say that the social science is actually a qualitative approach instead of the quantitative approach in the methodological processes. And therefore, when you read something, especially when I read something, it is a word of art instead of a graph or something, because I don't really follow the pure science, but it's a social science. So definitely we need to follow the qualitative approach and a lot of writing about it for more and more and more and precise informations and broad informations. And I hope you are also enjoying my picture as well, because it also mean picture is also meaningful things. It has a lot of visual representations and attractions for all ages, not only the children. Now I'd like to start discussions of my paper. The Domesday Book is evidence of a record of a survey commissioned by William, the conqueror of the much of England and parts of the Wales, completed in 1086. Areas like the meadows, the pastures, and woodlands, as well as the numbers of cattle and sheep, the watermills, and the sultans have been discussed, where the many times the discussions of horses has been mentioned. The Domesday Book has mentioned an estimated 98 times the many different horses about, of which the 44 different areas are in the shires of the Devon and Somerset, the heart of the present-day Exmoor National Park and the home to the Exmoor pony. So this is something, a book that we can go through to read about the ancient and medieval wild horses and the many type the how many types of breed of the horses. At least estimation can be found for these books, of which is called the Domesday books of the history. But still, it has a lot of argument as well, whether it is a proper writing or from where we get this kind of a writing or something like that, because there is no such 100% perfections or something like that. But again, as I say, it's the social science is a continuation of the study, so we have to improve those point and writings for better understanding and realizations. Uh, the equi-Indomite appear restricted to the southeast England, while the equi-Silvestri appear from the east of England. So these are the name of the breeding. Like the Norfolk and the Suffolk, the Silvestri cannot be recognized as a wild or a feral horse. These type of horses would live in woodlands. Many arguments have been seen to define the equal types of horses as the wild due to their unsettled existence or living without in the manner. The Domesday Book referred to horses and surrounding areas based on taxation in those days for a prediction that these horses had owners who could text. The Domesday Book also discussed bears and deer who were not considered liable owners who could text it. Therefore, such horses are also not regarded as wild animals. So these are many type of cross point arguments, like the taxation, owners, woodlands, and then animals, some other animals like beer and something like this. So these are some main key tags or tags of the main writings things, so that we have to from then we have to understand those um, points and arguments whether the horses were wild or domestics, because of those characteristics in those days too. On the other hand, proof of this has been seen in many examples of the wild horses in medieval England. Now we can say there is also some there were the wild horses as well. Not only always like argument whether it is wild horses or not or something like that. So in AD 950, the Anglo-Saxon lady Winfred left a personal legacy to a beneficiary of her share of the wild horses with Admer. Therefore, it can be analyzed that the wild horses have few functions. Another example can be categorized by Pope Gregorius III's sanctions to eat horse meat in AD 732, through which it can be analyzed that the horses were kept in the wild to be hunted. Evidence was also found in archaeological experiment that the horses in the medieval era were slaughtered for consumptions. The wild horses were still hunted for hides and meat in medieval and early modern Prussia. There was a hunting processes in 12th century Denmark, according to the historian Ranger. In Domesday books, the monks still ate the horse's meat even after the Pope banned it. Therefore, the hunting wild horses in medieval England cannot be ruled out completely. So these are the evidence, or maybe you can not the evidence. You can say these are some rational point that we can logically say that the horses were wild in the medieval Europe, and this is how we can tell them that they are the horses. Though, it is not really a perfectionist or something definition of the wild horses, but it is some kind of rationality that we can say during our presentation or something like that. At least some examples that this is how we can say these are the wild horses, or this is how we can't say these are the wild horses, or something like that. Wild horses and archers have been important original grazers in the Holocene landscape of the Europe. From the Middle Ages to the modern ages, it has been considered that the herds of the wild horses roamed large parts of Europe and were an integral part of the landscape processes. The early modern landscape of Europe was characterized by significant changes in land use, agriculture, and urbanization. It was a period of the transition from the medieval feudalism to a more centralized and commercialized economy. So now we can also say that there was a changes from the ancient to the early modern times, and from the agrarian economy to a commercialized economy. The medieval wild horses glimpses refers to the presence of the wild horses in medieval Europe and their significance in the ecosystem, as well as their relationship with the human societies during that time. So that, when you go for the commercialized urbanizations, like the industrializations or something like that, the use of the horses was decreasing, because of the many invention of the trains and buses and the motorcycles or something like it. But still the horses were used for commercializations in the early modern days too. And even in the modern days, in the 19th centuries, like 1920s and 1930s, if you see something in England and in the United States of America as well. Many of the president, I think one of the president of the United States, he also used the horses um, for his home, like to go to home and to come to the president's palace or something like that in those days too. Nowadays, the conic horses and the wide range of horses breeds have replaced these original wild horses as a part of the rewilding process in Europe. The herds of wild horses from the Middle Ages have been taken as an example of how natural grazing has been a way of a naturally functioning ecosystem. So that, it is a very understandable and reliable and realization that for a balanced ecosystem, that we need an animal husbandry and animal protections and preservations. Otherwise it will be imbalanced, and many type of calamities we can see. Something we are seeing already, like the many things, right? So, though I'm not telling about the COVID-19 because we can't say something like that about, and this is a completely uh, different things. But calamities could be many other things as well. To the conclude, my question is the future question is the importance of the rewilding hearts project in the European landscape. How it is important to rewilding the horses project in the European landscape. So it is because of the preservation of the ecosystem. I already say about it is because of the environmentalism. It is about the culture and heritage. It is about the preservation of the horses itself as well. So four main points. I mentioned about the Flemish culture and the Flanders of Belgium and Netherlands. They have a nice painting about the horses as well, um, and the environmentalism about the preservation of the ecosystems throughout the European continent, and the preservation of the horses itself as well. Um, so the rewilding of the horses project in the European landscape is important for the several regions. Firstly, um, the reintroducing with wild horses to their natural habitats helps to restore the balance of the ecosystem, as they play a key role in shaping the landscape through the grazing and trampling. Additionally, wild horses contribute to increase the biodiversity by creating and maintaining a variety of the habitats for other species. Moreover, they can help mitigate the spread of the wildfires by reducing the buildup of dry vegetation through their grazing activities. Overall, rewilding horse projects in Europe can have a positive impact on the environment and contribute to the conservation of natural habitats. So these are a few things that I can say about, but I have written a lot about on my paper. So these are the references that when I write my paper, and this is the Latvian culture and the buildings and everything else. This is the environment and everything. Again, it is all amalgamated, the nature and environment and the wild animals too. And thank you very much for the listening. Hello.
Hello. So we have question answer period. Ananda, I will abuse my privileges as a conference co-organizer and ask a question about your paper because I have also been looking into medieval wild horses. And there has been recently an article by Lila Lovash who was looking into the historical use of the word tarpan and the biological evidence, and she has found no evidence that there was a breed of wild horse or a type of wild horses which were tarpans. She has argued that in many cases the word tarpan was used either for Przewalski horses or for feral horses, and they were not a distinct breed. So this might be something
Yeah.
for you to consider.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing,
Yes.
are you sure that wild horse meat was eaten throughout Europe in the medieval period? Because there was this prohibition, and I haven't seen any evidence that it was consistently used for human consumption in Christian cultures.
I would like to send you the particular reference where it
Yeah, it
has
would
said
be useful.
that, yeah.
I can send you the article by
Mm.
Lila. Maybe it would be useful for you in your work. I just don't have this
Yeah.
reference with me right away, but it's available online, so it's you can look it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do recall there possibly the same paper in which the extent of eating horse flesh was discussed, but off the top of my head, I can't remember which paper it was. There certainly was some, and I'm really interested in this because I'm interested in horses in Scotland. There were a lot of, I think it's very interesting what you're saying about it's hard to distinguish between domesticated, feral, semi-feral. Those lines are really quite blurry. People would like to think they're hard and fast, but they're not. And I have come across a reference in Scotland in the reign of William I, William the Lion, King of Scotland, and it was another bequest. He said 1/10 of all my wild mares within this particular territory he left as a bequest to this religious house. So clearly people are very conscious of these animals in the landscape and are doing all sorts of things with them, using them for riding and other things, and eating in some circumstances as well. Yeah. But it's I think we're all interested in this topic, and I think we can all get right behind the idea that horses have a place in the landscape and are beneficial to it. Yes, definitely. Very much so. So thank you very
I'm also
much.
writing. I'm also writing about that another article. I have a presentation, I think, the next week about the Canadian horses, and it's linked with Europe, like European medieval horses.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So thank you both our speakers for this session, and we've still got plenty of time, so the floor's still open for any questions, comments, thoughts.
I have a question also to David. So I don't understand Italian, but was very helpful. Thank you to have the English and of course the illustration. So I was wondering if there are any distinguishing markers for St. James's horse, which is mentioned in this account, or is there something making it special? Yeah. I don't know if I need to translate
David, did
into
you
Italian.
catch that? Il cavallo di San Giacomo, what features make it special? I was interested because you mentioned that in northern contexts it seems to be a brown horse, and in Italian contexts a grey or white horse. Is that correct?
You're asking me?
I'm asking David,
Oh,
but I'm not sure whether he can hear us or not.
il cavallo bianco è quello classico.
The white horse is the classical one.
Sì.
Usually is
Nelle raffigurazioni,
in
sì.
the pictures
Sì.
you find usually the white horse.
Quello marrone è una rappresentazione nordica, cioè del
And
nord
the
Europa, sì,
brown horse is usually found in the north, in the north of Europe.
Very interesting.
Is that this is most of the difference between white and brown horses.
Di solito il cavallo bianco comunque, sì,
But usually is the white horse is bound with Saint James.
Associato al cavallo bianco, sì, San Giacomo.
Anastasia, did you have any other question or comment on the type of horse? I think we both have spotted that they're largely gaited horses. They're ambling, shown in the images. Yes. That's usually the first thing I spot these days.
Sorry, is the question for us?
I was just asking Anastasia if she had any
okay, sorry.
questions or
No more
comments,
questions.
but also that they were ambling horses. Yeah, as always, as so often.
I think they might be ambling because he's a saint, so he's like it's a comfortable ride, a palfrey on ambling.
Comfortable ride. Going long journeys, yes, meeting people. Yeah. I'm not sure what that would be in Italian. Is that ambulante? An ambling horse on the lateral movements rather than ambulare. Is that an Italian verb? Or did I just make it up?
In Latin, the term is something like ambulante, ambularius, I don't know.
Cos'è con ambulante?
Cosa?
Cavalli, ambulante?
Cosa vuol dire?
Non so.
Non ho capito.
No, maybe not. Maybe it's something different in Italian.
No.
It's a horse that with a lateral movement. The legs on the same side come forward together rather than like in trotting. It's a diagonal movement. But very often in medieval contexts, you see the horses performing this particular movement, which is very easy and comfortable to ride. It's very, very comfortable ride
Il
when you're going on
movimento
long
del
journeys.
cavallo medievale, cioè con le zampe davanti alzate.
Sì.
Yes, it's typical medieval art which you can find in the pictures of in the medieval time. These horses with or only one how do you call it, one or both legs, no it's not legs, which are up and not
on the same side.
Yes.
That's ambling. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
Very comfortable comfortable to ride.
Yes.
The saints went on long journeys. So they needed something comfortable. Yeah. Any more thoughts or comments? We've still got loads of time. So, well, saying loads of time, we've actually used it very well. But...
I have a question.
Hi, Monica.
Good morning.
Ask away.
Ho una questione per Davide e provo in italiano lentamente. Il cavallo bianco, non penso che è un cavallo specifico che ha esisto, ma sappiamo che ha un nome.
Che senso?
Ha un nome il cavallo bianco, cioè il cavallo di San Giacomo?
Io penso che sia nella raffigurazione San Giacomo è un santo, no? E viene raffigurato tante volte che arriva dal cielo a proteggere o ad intervenire nella realtà umana, e allora il bianco è il colore del cielo. Ecco, forse i pittori,
bene
i
anche, no?
pittori medievali usavano il bianco in questo senso, però è una mia interpretazione, ecco, no? Non
Ma
ho letto.
sappiamo
Sì.
come si chiama questo cavallo o no?
Ha un nome specifico?
Ah, no,
Il
non ho
nome?
No.
A nome?
non ho
No?
incontrato nomi del
Interessante
cavallo.
che
Sì,
il cavallo è anonimo.
sì,
Anonimo,
sì, sì.
Sì.
Di solito è il santo che cavalca, il cavallo è il secondario rispetto ecco, al contesto, però mi informerò e poi casomai
Grazie.
ecco, ti saprò dire, le saprò
Sì,
dire.
sì.
This is so often the case. The horse is anonymous. They become known by their rider. So it's Il Cavallo di San Giacomo, St.
Sì.
James's horse, and that's how he's known.
Sì.
Yeah, so often the case in history. We don't get to know their names. Any more thoughts, questions?